Earlier we mentioned that Ethernet is 10 megabits per second, and that's a standard. That's by definition. But we do have higher speeds today, so let's take a look at those. First of all, Ethernet, 10 megabits per second. We had to have at least Cat3 cable with twisted pair cable in order to achieve that. So the earlier versions of twisted pair couldn't do 10 megabits per second, but Cat3 could. We call that 10 base T when it's over twisted pair. We'll talk about this name a little more later on. 100 megabits per second was called fast Ethernet. So anytime you hear the word fast Ethernet, immediately think 100 megabits per second. By the way, many switches are called 10-100 switches, which means they can do 10 and 100, but no higher. Cat5 was required for 100 megabit per second in twisted pair cable, and of course we call that 100 base T. Gigabit Ethernet, 1000 megabits per second or 1 gigabit per second. We have to have at least Cat5e in order to reach gigabit Ethernet speeds. But since 6 is not that much more expensive, a lot of people just go ahead and use 6 if they're running 1 gig. 1000 base T or 1G base T. We have 5 gigabit, and that we have to have Cat6 in order to achieve 5 gigabit, and that we just call 5G base T. We have 10 gigabit, so 10 gigabits per second. Cat6A is capable of that. A means augmented, by the way, and E means extended back here in 5E. 10G base T when it's over twisted pair. We actually have now 40 gigabit per second Ethernet, and that is Cat8. We don't have any higher than Cat8 yet, and it's quite expensive, and you have to have special connectors at the end and so forth. But 40G base T is what we call that. Now, let's take a quick peek here, and I'm not going to go into details because there really are no good details. As I mentioned once before in another video, category has nothing to do with the physical construction. However, you can see some basic differences that you're likely to see. As we go higher, you're likely to see an increasing number of twists per inch. So you might see a higher twist per inch here, say in one of these, than you do over here. The shielding, so you notice we added some shielding over here on this Cat7. I don't see any other shielding in here right now on these, unless this might be some shielding there, but I can't really tell for sure. And then the center separator. See this little guy here? If you were to look at that from the end, it would look like an X, and you can lay these twisted pairs into those 4 grooves that it makes, and that separates them a little bit better. And so the center separator tends to be on the higher ones, and then the connector shielding itself, which I don't show here in this graphic. Now that terminology, X base Y terminology. So the 10 here means the speed, as you've probably figured out. This is 10 megabits per second or 5G megabits per second and so on. And then the T here stands for twisted pair. The base just means baseband. And what it means is this is the theoretical speed for a single Ethernet signal being transmitted under ideal conditions. So we just call that base because it is the theoretical base standard by which we measure all of them, so that they're all measured under the same standard. Now there are many others, by the way, and I have here a list of Ethernet standards. And let's see if I can pull that up here. And you'll see down here a whole list of these things, because T are not the only ones. Here's an F, FL, FB, FP, TX, and so on that you can learn about. And you don't have to learn them for this class, but just be aware that they are there, and that if you learn this much of it, you'll be fine in this class. That's it for this video.